Hi, I'm Sarah Caffey, and I wanted to talk to you about today was wrist pain with yoga. Now, yoga, there's a lot of different styles of yoga, but a lot of yoga does go into weight bearing into our hands. And as you can see, I have written down anatomy of the wrists. So if you can see my wrists, I'm going to stand up so you can see it a little bit better. We have two bones in the forearm. We have our radius and our ulna that come up. And the wrist comprises of these two bones, and then we have these rows of carpal bones here. Specifically, the wrist is these three bones here and these two bones here. Okay, so when we're weight bearing, those are the areas that are getting the most pressure. Now, our hand is kind of similar to the foot, where the foot also has these little bones that are arranged within an arch to help support our weight while we're walking. And our hand is kind of similar, as we all did evolve from animals that were on our hands and knees, but we don't do that anymore. So different from the heel in a foot, where that tends to take on a lot of pressure, in our hand we don't necessarily have that bone that takes on that weight bearing part. So we have to really utilize our muscles in our hand and our proper engagement to help disperse that force evenly throughout our wrists, almost making a nice support in our hands. So you can see how it'd be easy to just kind of collapse into our wrist at this junction of the carpal bones and the two radius and ulnas. So when you think about weight bearing through your hands, the 2 points, or the few points that you want most of your weight on, is these two fingers. That's where you should be getting most of your weight. So you want your weight mostly in, make an X marks the spot, in our pinky side, the pointer side, and right underneath the thumb, and then the pads of our thumb and our pointer finger. So when you are weight bearing through your hands, most of your weight should be going right through those areas. Okay, and then some minor areas that you want to make sure that you're pressing into are the pads of the other fingers. So these 3 points of the hand and the pointer finger get most of the pressure as we're weight bearing through our hands, and the other fingers get some pressure, but most of it is in this L-shaped position. Now, as you're pressing into your hands, it's almost like you're trying to suction cup this part of your hand off the table or off the ground. Okay, and you want actually very limited weight bearing through this aspect of the hand. So how do we get there when we're weight bearing? One, you want to spread your fingers out nice and wide. You might have heard the pointer finger pointing forward, or the middle finger pointed forward, or the pointer finger pointing forward. But really, when you're in this position, you want to look at your crease of your wrists, and whichever position allows that crease of the wrist to be pointing forward parallel to the front of your mat. Now, I'm going to bring us over here. Sometimes just pressing into our hands like that still might not be enough. So we have to make sure that we're engaged also in our shoulders, finding stability in the shoulders so we're not just collapsing into our wrists can be important. Finding this rotation of the upper arms, think biceps rotating forward, then helps put your pressure into your pointer finger and your thumb, allowing you to then press into your other fingers and almost suction cup up the middle part of your hand to make like an arch like you have in your foot. Now, in this position, still weight bearing through the hands still might not be enough. Maybe we just jumped into a lot of classes and some of these muscles that are helping to support and press into the ground are getting a little tired, and that can lead to some inflammation, and sometimes people might get some pain in this area. If you're getting pain in that area, stop, pause, maybe ice that evening. That can help calm that down, and try some different modifications. Some modifications might be just placing some kind of towel roll, or I have socks under the heel. So when you're in this position, you're not stretching so much into that wrist. So this towel roll allows for that wrist not to be in that 90-degree angle where we need a lot of extensibility and flexibility in our wrists, which if they're a little tired or tight might cause them to be tugged at that junction, or just for us to collapse into the wrist. Now, another way, if you don't have socks in your middle of your class, you can simply just roll up your mat and create that kind of junction. Now you can do this in your quadruped position, or if you go into your down dog, you're still having a little bit less weight in your arms, still finding that rotation, planting into the pads of your hands, specifically these pads and these points, and suction cupping your hand up to add that stability. Now, sometimes it might be a class that has a lot of weight bearing in the hands, and your hands just aren't strong enough for that, and that's okay, you'll get there. But you want to make sure that you are listening to your body. So some other modifications is just simply coming down onto your elbows. Now, say we're in a high plank. Just drop down to your knees, onto your elbows, or you can still be in this position. Sometimes you can even do down dog on the elbows. That does require a lot of flexibility in the shoulders, but it's a modification. Having blocks nearby, I like to show a lot of just hands and knee positions, maybe cat-cow, or these bird dog type of movements. That's still a lot of weight bearing through the hands. So just simply grab your blocks, utilizing the blocks to bring the ground closer to you, whether that's in this kind of position or a little higher, whatever feels more comfortable to you. Then in this position, you can still do your cat-cows, you can still do your bird dogs, etc. Now, when you're in your down dog position, I find that we often just kind of hang on our heels don't get down to the ground, and that actually can put a lot of weight into the wrists. So being even in both your hands and your feet can be very important. Now there's a few ways you can do that. One, you either have to walk your feet closer and bend the knees so you can have even pressure in your hands and knees. Two, you can use your blocks so you get yourself a little bit higher so your feet are just on the ground. This way, you're not collapsing or having to use as much strength in your hands, like so. But if you're doing any jobs that require typing, or these forearms are just still so tight, some simple ways to release them can be using your elbow. Say you're at a desk, just have your forearm rested on the desk, or since I'm on the ground, use my elbow and massage all those wrist flexors. These are the muscles that bring the hand up, and also the muscles that press into the ground. And so that's why they tend to get tight, supporting our wrists and our weight when we're on our hands and knees. Another way to try to help loosen up these muscles if they're already a little tight is to have a ball and just roll out the wrist. Right now, I don't have my ball with me, but you can also use a peanut, and you're just kind of almost rolling like you would roll out the bottom of your foot, but rolling out those carpal bones, rolling out the wrists where it feels good. Listening to the body. If it's a ball, you can go in a circle. Now, another way where we tend to do a lot of weight bearing through our hands is in certain transitions. One of those transitions is lowering down from a high, say you're in a forward fold, you go into a high plank, chaturanga. That can be, again, a lot of weight in that wrist. So what you can do is just drop down to your knees and slowly lower your chest to the ground, and slither down. Just ways to modify until you get that flexibility and strength in your wrists. Now, if you're only doing one yoga class a week, that might not be enough to help with that strength. So that might be something that needs to be worked on throughout the day if your goal is to continue with vinyasa type classes, which have a lot of flow onto your hands. Now, we talked about loosening up the wrists just for your immediate symptoms, but you can also do some just strengthening really easily on your own. One way that I like to do that's really simple is just standing with my prayer hands. Now, it's important to make sure the shoulders are drawn back and I'm pressing into my hands. And as I'm pressing into my hands, I'm pressing one hand away. So I'm kind of going into a stretch, but what I'm doing is I'm slowing down myself using my muscles. So I'm pressing into my hands evenly, and I'm slowly going to the left, slowing that motion down, and then to the right. And you can do this at home. You can do this daily. As long as it feels good, listen to your body, but you can do this daily, let's say 20 to 30 seconds a day, just to build up that wrist flexor strength. Now, you could also just be on your hands, and if your hands in this position is a little bit too much, where most of my weight's supported in my knees, but I'm coming over my wrist and then I'm pressing into the ground, my hands away. So I'm slowing myself coming forward. So all of this work right now is coming from me pressing into my hands as I'm coming back, and I'm slowing my motion down with my hands as I'm coming over, finding those pressure points that you want in yoga, and controlling how much weight actually goes through your hands with your lower legs. Let's say doing 2 sets of 10 to 12 of these a day can help build strength in these muscles, as long as it's not painful or if you calm those symptoms down first before your yoga class. Now, you could also perform that just standing, doing the same thing. I'm pressing into the table, pushing my body away, and I'm slowing down this motion as I come over my wrists. Working on that wrist strength, okay? Using as much strength as you need. Now, another way that you can strengthen those wrist flexors is simply having some kind of weight, a small weight, or a can of soup. That works too, or even a water bottle. Rest your hand on your knee or on the table, and just work on flexing it up. And I would also recommend going the other direction, flexing it towards your wrist extensors, just to work both sides. That can help too.